Welcome to Industrial Marketing Live. As we are nearing the end of Q3, budget planning is probably just around the corner for a lot of you. I know some folks are already starting on them. And today we're really excited to be joined by very own IML regular, Katie Klaus from Broaster Company to talk about planning your 2025 marketing budget. So Katie, do you want to say hi, introduce yourself a little bit more?
Sure. So my name is Katie Klaus. I am the Senior Marketing Manager at Broaster Company, kind of the head of the marketing department. I've been here about 11 years, so it's been quite a while. So I've kind of seen both sides of the budgeting process from kind of being an outsider looking in and then kind of handling the budgeting process for the department. So we manufacture commercial food service equipment, so stuff that you'd find at a restaurant kind of behind that kitchen door.
Awesome. So just to kind of get us started, budget planning can feel so daunting. People are coming from different starting points. How do you approach getting the ball rolling? I know you mentioned that you've already kicked it off at Broaster.
Yeah, so it is so important when you kick off your budgeting to know your senior leadership's kind of strategic plan and the direction the company is headed. So whether that's, breaking into new channels or verticals, maybe a new distribution method, maybe product innovation, a lot of those require a lot of legwork from the marketing team and is really going to impact your budget. Maybe your company decides that you want to grow your bottom line profit. They could do that via, being more efficient in your manufacturing processes. Maybe they're doing facility upgrades, buying new equipment. So a lot of that is going to be a lot of big capital outlay from them. And usually that's going to kind of mean too that you don't really have as much to go around to the other departments. If they're looking at new channels or verticals, that's going to mean new value propositions. And if everybody remembers MJ's famous messaging pyramids that she talked about at IMS in Austin earlier this year, taking a deep dive on that. If your company decided to sell direct when previously you were through a different distribution method, that could be a new website, that could be online ordering. And you're going to have a big role in that website development, product photography, descriptions, all of those kinds of things. So, knowing that strategic vision really helps us to kind of not unintentionally work against their master plan. So if you plan on launching a new website this year at a cost of maybe, let's say, $60,000, but the company is planning to add an online ordering portal in 2 years, if you don't know that, there's no way for you to be able to make sure that that website is going to continue to work properly with that new online ordering platform. So it's just really important to all be aligned on the strategic go forward with your leadership. And then that can really help you build exactly what you want to accomplish with your budget.
Yeah, such a great point on the website. Like, it's not just what are we trying to accomplish for this year? It's like, what are we trying to accomplish in the next 3, 5, 10 years, if they know that far out. I know another common starting point for marketers when they're asked to put together a budget is they're just given a number.
Mhm.
How do you think about strategy when you have a number that you are confined to? Is it still worth knowing those long-term objectives? How would you think about it differently?
Sure. So it is important to know that long-term plan, but you kind of have to take it into two parts. So I would break that down into understanding the current state of the marketing budget and then setting your goals to align with that strategic vision and then your plan to achieve those goals. So to understand the current state, I recommend becoming besties with somebody in accounting and to just really pick their brain and get as much knowledge as you can about what goes into your budget. For example, who pays for the Adobe Creative Cloud licenses? Is that a marketing expense or does that go against IT? What about your CRM? Our HubSpot bill is just over $25,000. So knowing where that goes, again, is that IT? Is it sales? Is it marketing? What about your domain website renewals? That's something I think we have I think we've got about 30 domains that we renew every year. So if you aren't planning for that $3,500, to come in, then that's going to kind of catch you off guard. Other things, that one thing that I forgot about was, are you members of any associations? So does marketing or sales pay for those association dues? We've got about 8. So knowing when those dues come due, is it yearly in January? Does it come due in April? And what those costs are, and kind of how, again, if that charges against marketing or sales, just really digging into what goes into each of your line items. And then really finding out, what goes into your trade show budget. Do the hotel costs for everybody that attend the show, does that hit the trade show budget? Or do those charges hit each individual budget? Like the sales hotel rooms go against the sales department, marketing's against marketing, or do they all go to marketing? That could be a big hit too. When we go to the restaurant show in May, it's a 4-day show with a lot of setup time. My hotel bill is about $20,000. So if you weren't expecting that, that's quite a bit of paid advertising that you could do with your media partners. What about your lead software? Does your industry have a database of decision makers that you can subscribe to? Where does that charge go to? Or is there a common quoting software that you can pay to add your products to, like for an online catalog for people in your industry to be able to reference when they're working on a development project? These are all great things to really find out from accounting. I'd highly recommend going through your year-to-date and the previous year's GL report line by line and write notes on what is a recurring expense and then what do you have more control and kind of flexibility with. So once you know what goes into that budget, then you want to look at your past campaign performance. Are you able to calculate your true ROI for each marketing activity? Which ones were winners, which ones should you swap out for something different? There's a wide variety of different tactics you can do, trade shows, industry magazine ads or e-blasts, Google ads, paid social media, LinkedIn ads, all the different types of tactics that you use. What perform the best? Which campaigns maybe generated the best quality leads or had the lowest ROI? Now, you don't want to always just repeat the lowest cost ROI, as brand awareness is a big part of advertising as well. But really think about, which tactics are worth repeating. What do you want to include in your next year's budget? And then which ones do you want to, maybe move away from and reallocate those funds elsewhere? And then once you've kind of grounded yourself in the current state, then you want to set your goals for the year. And then how are you going to achieve those goals? Are they saying we want to achieve a 10% growth in sales? Well, where is that growth coming from? Is it a different product mix? Is it a new distribution method, a new channel or segment? Are you launching a new product? And then how are you going to achieve those goals? Is it a new website with more focused landing pages, refined value propositions? What if you start a podcast? What gear do you need to execute that podcast? What campaign tactics are you going to use and carry forward? And which ones are you going to remove? And then you have to ask yourself, do I have the in-house talent to execute these projects? Or do I need to look outside? Do I need to hire a full-time headcount? Could I use a freelancer or a contractor or hire an agency? Each of these have very different implications for your budgets. For me, an added headcount to the payroll greatly differs from just using an agency or a contractor. And then is that agency going to be a monthly recurring fee or is it going to be project-based? So there's kind of a lot of things that really go into that as far as figuring out how to execute that plan.
And so once you have a good grasp of what the goals are and what is currently working, how do you think about whether you should negotiate with leadership or other departments to try to advocate for your own mission, so to say?
Oh, sure. And I love this question. Great question, Alan. If you have some big asks in your budget, like building a new website or a trade show booth, or maybe a heavy lift on some big innovations, and you're getting pushback from leadership, maybe suggest a mid-year budget review. They might be more willing to agree to a smaller initial starter budget and then release additional funding once the revenue numbers are in for the first 2 quarters of the year, just to kind of give them the freedom and the flexibility to then make that mid-year adjustment. The other thing I really try to do is have my budget very detailed out. I'm a planner, very much a planner. And so it's detailed out very much line by line. Yes, it does take a lot of work to do that. But you're not going to go into the budget process with the leadership team and sit down and do the whole Austin Powers thing. And I might be dating myself here, but just being like $1 million, that's not what you're asking for. So you can go in and say, hey, there's going to be a 10% increase on freight costs for all the trade shows. My union fees at my venues go up about 6% per year. In order to accomplish that goal, we're going to need to do these 3 things. By having it kind of all written out, spelled out, you can say, okay, if I have to cut 50,000, this is everything I want to do. Where should we cut it? If it's all detailed, they could say, well, let's take this out. Let's take this out. But then maybe ask, hey, in January or in June, can we revisit that and see if we can put that back in? It never hurts to ask. Now, again, I don't think, well, maybe they do, that senior leadership thinks that we're all just trying to buy a bunch of t-shirt cannons and, 300 t-shirts. But hey, I guess if it would reach your target audience in the right way and increase your sales, then I guess I would do it, but I'd put it on that experimental list, right?
Yeah, let's not rule it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, who doesn't want a free t-shirt?
I want one.
Exactly.
We got a question in the chat about blending marketing budget with the data reporting. Are there any specific KPIs that you tie to your budget and kind of use? And if there are, how did you develop those with leadership?
So we look at KPIs as far as, getting in the lead counts. So our online lead counts that come in via the website. We track our social media followers, engagement, things like that. For, let's say, our trade show spend, it's kind of more of a, were we on budget or were we off budget? We also keep track of how many leads we get for the show. We are a very popular booth at trade shows. When they say, how do you bring people to your booth? We don't always have that problem. We give out fried chicken. So we get a lot of people to the booth, but we could end up with 800 leads and, half of them are just people that wanted a piece of chicken, right? So really trying to track how many of those leads are qualified. So it's kind of more figuring out what those KPIs are and what is most important to leadership. Somebody might say, well, how many total scans did you get? Okay, great. But for me, it's how many of those are qualified buyers? So just making sure that everybody is aligned. I don't know that I've ever had a KPI that is so strongly tied to the budget where it's like if you hit this KPI, then it will release extra funds. Those are kind of more of discussions that we come up with leadership.
Yeah. And so what if you're dealing with something that has a lot more known unknowns, like budgeting for research and development? How do you think about that?
Oh, sure. So usually that is, you're kind of doing some educated guesses, right? So we think, if you think like maybe a $50,000 budget to say, okay, we're going to need to do campaign messaging. And as far as value proposition, do we need to do industry research? Do you need to purchase a subscription to an online platform that would give you some data and analytics about your target audience? So those are all some things that go into that. Hopefully you have a really strong innovation pipeline where marketing is involved from the beginning to do that define, develop work, define, explore, and then develop. So marketing is really hands-on in the beginning to help with those research and development and target metrics and those types of things.
Yeah. And when you're thinking about your budget, I know you mentioned doing some deep analysis on, the previous budgets and what worked out, what panned out in terms of results. How do you decide like what you want to try out for the next year and put in that R&D budget?
Sure. Experimentation, I think, is always a priority for everybody, right? When you think about marketing, it changes all the time, right? And I kind of think maybe that's what we all like about it. It keeps us on our toes. We don't have the same day over and over and over again, right? We're always doing something different. We're always trying new things. Think about, Meta updating their algorithms and Google depreciating their, third-party cookies and then not. It's always kind of that moving target. You could do, that same exact campaign, the same steps 10 times, and then suddenly parameters, beyond our control will change, and there's nothing we can do about it. We all learned to pivot so well during COVID and to kind of experiment about what works, that you kind of always have to have that experimentation kind of in your back pocket. Be trying new things. That way you know where to move next. If your primary driver for your inbound leads all of a sudden dries up, what are you going to do? You can't just be like, uh-oh, what am I going to do? You have to always kind of have that next thing. Oh, I've been testing this. I've been experimenting over here. That way, okay, we're just going to shift these ad dollars this way. I've already done my initial experiments. I know kind of what kind of results we could get. All we have to do is kind of turn that dial up a little bit with some additional funds. As far as like what percentage of my budget would I do for experimenting, I don't know that I have a number like 5%. But when I see underperforming metrics, I definitely try something different. When my Google ads started to underperform a few months ago, I started researching more referral campaigns for current customers to earn bonuses for referring new customers and try to figure out how that is going to work with the budget and how that works as far as logistically with finance and everything.
Yeah, that's a
So
great example. How do you find yourself like having to call audibles throughout the year? Like obviously you could maybe start the year thinking, oh, I won't have to do any R&D. And then like you said, maybe Google Ads is underperforming and you might need to shift things around.
Yeah, I mean, definitely you do have to do audibles. We kind of had a unique situation this year where we actually had too many orders coming in. So production was overwhelmed and we kind of had to dial back the advertising a little bit, which is, I mean, great to have happen. But you kind of go, wait a minute, we got to throttle back. Where are we going to throttle back? You got to keep the pipeline primed and keep things coming in, but you got to kind of slow it down just a little bit. So kind of reallocating that budget and saying, okay, maybe now's the right time to try an experiment. Maybe let's try something different, or we're just really kind of focusing on the grocery store segment as something new for us. Previously, we were focused on more restaurants and convenience stores. So engaging with the grocery store publications and, running an e-blast there and just kind of working on that brand awareness piece, because that way they know who you are and then start working more on that value proposition for them. So just kind of getting that awareness out there was kind of a big thing for me. And then I noticed that kind of my best performing tactic that we do are e-blasts that we send to through an industry publication. So that's direct to the people that are interested in buying. And I tend to find that those perform the best as far as lead generation, closures. So that's kind of where I would try to lean, maybe if sales weren't performing as well. So yes, throwing that audible and doing those pivots are definitely very important.
We had a question from the chat asking if you could explain more about how you lay out your budget, especially since it's so detailed. You can't probably show your real budget to us, but is there anything that you can tell us to help us kind of understand how that could look?
Sure. So our budgets are set up. It's going to be all of our GLs are going to be down the rows, and it's divided out between employee education, the trade show budget. I've got literature development. So if I have a new product and I need literature developed, or that new product, I want to hand out brochures to my distributor network, it could go against that budget. I've got photography. So if I need to bring in professional photographers, usually that's going to include a food stylist. That's its own budget, photography. Then if we're doing video development, I've got website development, content development. So everything is kind of broken out. I've got a digital media bucket, which is where I put my Google ads. I've got a social media bucket that's for any paid management that I need, and then also any paid spend. So each thing is very separate. I've got one for creative costs. So if I need to use an outside agency to develop creative, that would go there. Any agency fees is a separate bucket. And then what I do, let's say that bucket is sitting at $100,000, kind of off to the side, I say, okay, this 100,000, this is how it's breaking out. I'm going to spend 20,000 here. I'm going to do 10,000 here, 5,000, and so on and so forth. And then kind of going down the columns, we have everything broken down by month. So our accounting department wants to know not only how much are you going to spend, what are you going to spend it on, but even down to what month are you going to spend it. We have some budgets where we'll do an accrual. So my trade show budget, for example, is probably $350,000 this year, and it's broken down into 12 equal monthly installments. So even if I don't spend it, it goes into an accrual bucket, and then just that amount hits my budget each month. It kind of helps with the huge peaks and valleys that accounting experiences. So to kind of level that out a little bit more, we do some accrual accounts. And then that's why I said, going through your budget with an accounting person to say, wait a minute, this $2,000 in my dues and subscriptions bucket, what was that? Oh, well, that's your 1-year renewal for GoToWebinar. Oh, okay. I didn't realize that hit marketing, but okay, sure. We'll take that. But just knowing what's going to be coming in, even if you think you know it all, I guarantee you there are things that are going to come in that you have no idea. And then it goes down even to insurance and premiums. Then you have your general travel bucket, airfare, meals, car rentals. If I expense any mileage, that's on its separate bucket. So I probably have 100 GLs that go down with each individual buckets, and then all broken out by month.
Mm-hmm. And we kind of touched about this already, but we had a follow-up question in the chat about how you track your exact spend ongoing, and if you involve the finance team or accounting to help you keep track of all that.
Sure. So I keep detailed records as far as, okay, and I'm actually was working on that before the call today, was I ordered a placement with a industry publication, signed all the paperwork. So I need to go ahead and account for that money. So I keep a running spreadsheet of, this was my total bucket. Let's just say it was 100,000 for the year that I was going to spend with industry publications. And I just agreed to do 6 magazine ads and 6 consecutive issues. I got 2 for 1 on my e-blasts, and it was about $9,000. So go ahead and put in there, these are the months that these ads are going to be running. This was the total amount. This is how much it breaks out to be. And then that way I know, so of that 10,000, I just accounted for 9,000 of it. So then I kind of have that going monthly. I wouldn't say I do that for dues and subscriptions or, those types of things. I do it more for those bigger ones, like the magazine spends, creative costs, website costs, things like that. And then monthly, our accounting department sends us over a full report on a line item by line item, everything that was charged to the budget. I always go through that. Sometimes I think I'm the only one that does, because I'll be like, hey, there was a $75 charge to this bucket. And they're like, of course you're going to ask. I'm like, well, every dollar counts, right? I like to kind of spend company money the way that I would spend my own money. I'm not going to spend it just to spend it. I want to make sure that I'm using it effectively and that I know where it's going. I don't want at the end of the year, somebody to be like, you're over 10%. Why? No, I'm over 10% because my union fees, instead of going up 6% like I thought, actually went up 12%, which totally screwed me up. And then the out of the show ended up being on a Saturday, which was overtime, double overtime for the union. And then, all these little things that you don't think add up. Or have you guys noticed that when your trade show moves from city to city, there are some cities that are so much cheaper than others? We go to Chicago. Oh, yeah, 20% more. You go to Atlanta. Oh, no, you're going to be fine. Orlando. Nah, you're going to be fine. Vegas. Ooh, plan for an increase there. So just little things to always keep track of. I mean, my trade show budget, I have each show on a tab, and then I go through and I know exactly this is how much I spent on badges. This is how much I spent on apparel for the team. I expect my gas to be $15,000. My electric's going to be $20,000. My material handling fees are going to be $25,000. You know, I know what it's going to be, and then even when I get those bills from Freeman, I go through and I itemize it. I am not afraid to call Freeman up and be like, hey, you know, last year it took you 10 hours to do this. We did the same thing, but this year it took you 20 hours. Why? And they will always credit you that back. Like I'm very meticulous when it comes to my budget. And I think that really kind of shows my integrity, and that people aren't just going to be like, well, she bought another t-shirt cannon. You know, it's there's definitely a rhyme or a reason behind it.
Man, I think you deserve a t-shirt cannon for all that diligence.
You know, it's kind of funny if the word t-shirt and my name are in the same sentence around here. Yeah, people are like, oh, you can't say t-shirts around Katie because she tries to give t-shirts to everybody. Because I'm like, hey, 70th anniversary, everybody in the shop gets a t-shirt. It's like a bad word. I just can't say it anymore. And I don't even have a cannon. I mean, I should have a cannon. I know, right?
Yeah, personally deliver all of those t-shirts via
Exactly.
Canon. All right. Well, Aaron, we had some questions in the chat here. One from Mary. You want to bring that one in?
Oh yeah, sorry, it's popping off a little bit. I gotta find it. Oh yeah, Mary was asking about surprise expenses. So we talked a little bit how you budget for R&D, which can be a little bit more planned, but like, what if you're not expecting to have a huge extra expense at a trade show, for example? It sounds like you're pretty good at anticipating those once you've done them for a while, but other things pop up. How do you deal with those?
Oh, sure. So I actually have a really great example for this one. We developed a new pressure fryer, and it's got all these awesome bells and whistles. And as part of the innovation process in our industry, you can apply for different awards and recognition. And so we decided, hey, we're going to apply for this Kitchen Innovations Award. And if we were to get it, it's going to be a huge honor. Everybody, it's kind of that big PR piece, and your equipment is featured in the special showroom. You can use the logo throughout the whole year. So it's this big deal, right? I think hundreds of submissions are made, and only about 30 pieces of equipment receive this designation. So the application fee is like around $1,500. And then once the people who are receiving the award are announced, you have to pay an additional $16,000. And that is for your additional booth space in the show. So to go from I wasn't planning on it to an extra $17,500, that kind of hit me. I was like, oh, I wasn't planning on that. So how am I going to offset this? Can I lower my trade show costs? Because it's a trade show expense, but it's a marketing kind of thing. You know, how am I going to do this? And as you guys all know, 60% of your budget for trade shows is literally the concrete space that you're on and all your venue and union fees. There's nothing I can do about that. And odds are I bought that booth space a year ago, so I can't make it any smaller at this point. I can't really take fewer people because we have this new innovation. We're expecting more traffic, so I need to bring more food. You know, you can't hand carry stuff into the shows. I got to pay that material handling charges. So it obviously was not going to fit into there. So I kind of had to go through my budget and say, okay, I was figuring $20,000 for product photography for the year and to do one photo session every quarter. So rather than doing that for 20, let's take that down to 10. I'm going to do 2 photography sessions and see if I can get through with that. Okay, so that's 10,000 right there. Where else can I trim a little bit to kind of offset those unexpected expenses? And went through and just kind of decided, okay, I'm going to spend a little less here. You know, I'm going to do a little less over here. I'm going to maybe try doing an experiment with this tactic and kind of take that down a little bit. So with my company, those big unexpected expenses are okay as long as you can offset it somewhere else. And then if I decide, hey guys, you know what? This was a huge unexpected expense and unfortunately I can't offset it. Just getting that pre-approval so that way they know, and that communication with them is so important. You can't just be $30,000 over budget on a trade show without going, hey, I'm having some issues. My union fees came in super high. I just want to let you know. Because if accounting comes knocking on your door going, hey, what happened? Just giving them that communication that, hey, I'm just need you to be aware of this coming up.
Mhm. And on the flip side of that, what about if you've got more money than you expected? You said that you don't like spending money just to spend it. So how do you think about reallocating money that you've got extra?
Sure. So we had budgeted this year to do a completely new website. And we also started working on kind of who we are as a company, how we talk about our company. People, when they come up to us at the trade shows, and I hate to say this, this is like the worst fear of a marketer, is they walk up to the trade show booth and they go, but who are you and what do you do? And we really wanted to simplify that message. So we've been working on that process. And unfortunately, though, the website had to wait until we could actually finish this because it's no point to proceed with the website knowing that we're going to have to change it all. So I will have a surplus in my budget. So I talked to senior leadership and said, hey, the website project, we're going to be bumping it till next year. So that's going to be an extra, whatever it was, $30,000 in the capital expense budget. What would you like me to do? Can I reallocate that and use it elsewhere? Or would you prefer to drop that to the bottom line? And they were able to say, you know what, in another department, they had an overage on their budget. So if it's all right, we're just going to, take that to help offset their overages. We're going through a big project where they are really simplifying the manufacturing process to make it more efficient, rather than having the units set up where an operator builds 4 and then they move to the next 4 and then they move to the next 4. We actually put in what they called a work smart line. So the equipment is actually on these lift stations and a new piece of equipment can come off every so many minutes versus doing these batch processes. So there's obviously a big capital expenditure when it comes to making those type of improvements in the infrastructure of the facility.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah. All goes back to having that bestie in the accounting department. I'm sure they really appreciate that open communication from you.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And then you really got to develop that trust because if you're a wild card and all of a sudden a $40,000 Freeman bill comes in that you weren't expecting, I mean, I couldn't be in accounting. That's why I'm in marketing, right? But to not know what's coming in and when it's coming in, that would stress me out. I'm sure they're used to that, but I just can't do that to somebody else.
Mhm. Have
Yeah.
you taken an accountant to lunch lately?
I bring them regular Diet Cokes from McDonald's in the morning. So
Oh,
There you go.
lovely.
Bring them a little something every day. There you go. Even
I
better.
figured, hey, there's nothing I can do to help you with your day to day and help you with your workflow. But if I can caffeinate you, I'm doing good, right? That's how I can help support you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't forget where your energy came from.
Exactly, exactly. And I also want to say, I really want to make sure that everybody really accounts for education in their budget, whether that's attending webinars or joining different association groups. That is so key. Or attending Industrial Marketing Live. They totally did not tell me to say this, guys, but in Austin, I went this year. It was amazing. So making sure to include those extra funds to further your education, whether that's, learning that podcast software that you want to start or going and attending these events. It's just so important. And to make sure that you set aside funds for that. Even if it's as simple as, hey, I did LinkedIn Premium and I get access to all of those courses and classes for $40 a month. Even just starting small, but working up to always constantly be improving yourself, your skills, your leadership. It's so important.
Yeah. Thanks
Yes.
for the plug.
Again,
Um,
they totally did not tell me to do that.
we didn't. But yeah, it's something that's easy to forget to budget for, right? You're concerned about everything you're trying to do, and then you're like, oh wait, I'd like to learn some things or go to this conference or take this class. So that's a great reminder.
Mhm.
As we're getting kind of towards the end here, I want to ask a final question for anybody that's feeling like super inspired and, ready to start doing their budgeting a little bit differently. Maybe you're currently in the camp where it's like, I get a number and I try and have line items, but I don't feel like it's a very strategic initiative. Um, what would be your advice to anyone for like advocating for their budget or advocating for a process that's maybe more like what you've talked about today?
Oh, sure. I would definitely sit down with your boss or supervisor and just say, hey, you came to me and said, okay, if we gave you $200,000, how would you spend it? Um, really saying, where do we want to be as a company? And help me figure out where the strategic goals and that vision is and how I can help the company get there. Really dial into that. And that definitely shows your boss that, wow, you're thinking outside of your little department and you are thinking big. You are part of the team that's going to drive the company forward. So definitely engage with senior leadership, engage with your boss. Really try to get so hands-on with it that they can see that you really care and that you're learning and you want to do better and be better. And really kind of even sometimes when I'm looking at, magazine ad spend, I always ask for things a la carte. I say, okay, I'm looking for a plan to do this. This is my target audience. I'm trying to increase my leads. I'm thinking I want to do an e-blast. I'm not so big about, web banner ads. I think those, if you do them, they should just be a throw on, a bonus. I don't really want to pay for those, but have it all be a la carte. So then you can sit down with your boss and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. So in order to grow sales, I'm thinking we're going to need a new website with new value propositions. We're going to need new product photography. I need to engage with maybe an outside designer to work on some things, and then obviously a web design company, and really kind of think out all of the steps of the process and what that is going to do for the company as a whole and where it can take the company, and kind of create just this vision of this is where I think we can go. And if you can get your boss inspired, I mean, they are going to be so on board with where you want to go and what you want to do. Um, definitely bring people along with you, engage them, bring them along. Trying to just spring a big idea on people sometimes doesn't go over very well. You kind of have to drop little nuggets as you go, so they kind of get used to the idea, and then they're like, oh yeah, 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 oh awesome, yes, that's where we want to be, that's what we want to do. And honestly, I kind of did that when I got back from the summit last time. After watching MJ's presentation, it was phenomenal about the value propositions and the pyramids, and completely rethinking how we talk to our audience, how the message for every single buyer, whether that's, we have kind of a more complicated industry, but if we're selling to a chain account, so let's say I wanted to sell equipment into Chili's, right? There's going to be like a research and development team. There's going to be a engineering team. There's going to be a food innovation team. You're not going to talk to the buyer until way later in the process. So what is going to matter to that engineer? What's going to matter to that food innovations team? What's going to matter to that restaurant manager, to that franchisee, to bring in that piece of equipment to do that new food program or menu item? So when I got back from the summit, I was like, hey, this is amazing. I want to completely change how we talk to everybody, make a brand new roadmap. This is where they are. This is what they care about. And man, the whole room was like, yes, we're going to do this. And it was just awesome. So really getting them on board and just being passionate about what you do, and just kind of bringing them along with you. I don't know if that answered your question. I kind of went off on a little tangent there, but it's just so important to be on that team and bring them along with you.
Yeah, I think that was great. It just as a quick follow before we got to close up shop, but I had one from the chat. How do you approach leadership? You say you drop little hints before you kind of bring the full presentation. Was it like a thing you do in the break room to drop little hints, then you ask for a full meeting, or how do you do that?
Oh, sure. So it's going to depend upon your boss and kind of your regular cadence of meeting with them. If you talk to them every day, if you pass them in the hallway, or if you just have weekly one-on-ones. So it's really kind of going to depend upon what your normal communication is with them. When I like to drop little nuggets for my CEO, usually that's walking in the hallway. You know, if I see him walking by my office, like, oh, hey, I heard this, you know, and just to kind of gauge that temperature, you know. So it's kind of just little nuggets or little ideas, or I was thinking about this. Have we ever tried something like that? Or to kind of get that history, but also see that curiosity. And if you can get them to kind of nibble a little bit on what you're putting down.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Great advice. Thank you so much, Katie. I feel like this was a wealth of knowledge about budget planning, from how to format your spreadsheet to how to have really lofty conversations with leadership. And this is the most excited I've ever been about budget planning. So thank you so much for your time and for joining us today.
No problem. And we'll be in the Slack channel afterward. If you guys have any more questions, drop them there and we'll be looking at those and answering them there.
I think you'll probably have a few.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Well, just a couple announcements before we head out. Our next time we meet will be September 19th, and our guest will be Luke Wittenbreaker from MacTech, and he's going to be talking with us about how to better enable your sales team. So that will be really exciting, constant ongoing conversation about sales and marketing relationship that I think he'll have really good perspective on. Also, feel free to join us in the Industrial Marketing Collective. Katie mentioned Slack. We also have the Industrial Marketing Collective on a platform called circle.so, which includes all those discussions, but there's also even more resources and community in there. And then lastly, this got plugged a couple times, but the Industrial Marketing Summit 2025 registration is open. This will be in Austin again from February 26th through 28th. So if you have any questions about anything you want to get added to the Industrial Marketing Collective, anything like that, find a gorilla, message us, and we'll be happy to help you.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.